These lock and load gauges, you can use these in conjunction with your dial vernier caliper or digital caliper. Mount these on that caliper and measure your cartridge case from the head of the case with the case neck inserted into this gauge and the stops on the shoulder. You can measure the distance, record that on your calipers. A bullet with a rounded ogive compared to a bullet with a secant ogive such as a Hornady, these bullets impact the rifling slightly different. So if you're using a Hornady spire point with a secant type of an ogive, and you go to perhaps a spear bullet with a rounded profile, there may be some differences. Got something that's even considerably finer. This is a mill bastard file, second cut, and it's flat on one side, rounded on the other. This is just a flat one. I use this one here to get my bead border. Call this a bead border around the cheek piece. This is an orbital type sander. This has some fine paper in it. The next thing that I've got to do is go to 60 grit paper, for instance, and this will take a quarter of a sheet of your paper. Start with 60 grit. I go to 120, 150, 220, 320, 400. That's as far as I go, with stock, but I do what I can with this orbital sander, and I do, this is a sanding block. You attach, a piece of sandpaper to it. Takes a quarter of a sheet of sandpaper. In other words, fold it lengthwise and then fold it again, so you've got it folded, so you get 4 pieces that are long enough to go on one of these blocks and so forth. Many, many hours just building the rifle stock and so forth. Aside from the checkering, easy have 20 to 30 to 40 hours in that stock. I'm going to talk about a recently new announced cartridge. Winchester 6.8 Westerner. Now, I don't know why that we've chosen this designation 6.8. It's 270 caliber. We've been able to get along for many, many years designating many, many different cartridges as 270 caliber, 277 bullet diameter. This country's really never went to metric. The 6.8 is a metric designation. So I guess that'll be whatever it is. Now, my main interest in talking about this cartridge is, here we are again trying to reinvent the wheel. Well, I'm going to point out exactly what this cartridge is and what this cartridge isn't. It's loaded with slightly heavier bullets than what the 270's been loaded with as a rule. For many, many years, nozzlers made a 160 grain nozzler partition, A few years ago here, they came up with a 165 grain nozzler AccuBond. We're going to revisit the 6.5 Creedmoor. It's absolutely astonishing to me that over all the years since 2013, that the situations that I've encountered with the variation in cartridge brass has not turned up somewhere in one of the gun magazines until a magazine that I got yesterday, Shooting Times. Shooting Times has an article about a new rifle that came out, and in that article, here's the edition of the Shooting Times. Dimensional characteristics.
variation in manufacture of cartridge brass. This is what it's been all about, folks, and we still got naysayers out here that think that somebody doesn't know what they're talking about. Well, Joseph didn't know what he was talking about precisely. He didn't point to the correct situation. It's the cases, not the dimension of the chamber. I wouldn't think for a minute that Seiko would ever in 100 years chamber a rifle with too tight of a chamber. It's the manufacture of brass.
We're going to talk about rifle barrels, specifically the rifling forms, the numbers of the lands and the grooves of the barrel, twist rates, and dimensional aspects of rifle barrels. In my experience, over a lifetime, every time that we change one of these aspects, we change somewhat depending on many circumstances, perhaps accuracy, perhaps velocities, and other factors, such as pressure curves, and one thing or another with our loads, our hand loads.